But let me use the opponent of Gernot Rohr as an example here. Now, do you think it's the same criteria that was used in his appointment?
Well, I think that of Gernot Rohr's, one of those accidents that happens the same way as West Harvey was an accident. They were not intended to get result. Though, let's get this done, let's tell the other people to go to hell. Then it works. When we plan for it, it doesn't work.
Sorry, when we plan for it, it doesn't work. Is it that?
You notice I said in brackets, plan.
Okay, Kasim, let's look at that issue of planning.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to raise our sports to a point. I mean, people have talked about how we can use sports to make a difference, create employment, get not just the youth and the old, the young and the older generation to work together to move this nation forward. What's wrong with our planning?
Well, I mean, what's wrong is that I don't think a plan exists. That, I think, is fundamentally what is wrong. If you look at Nigerian sports and you plot a trajectory, up until the 90s, you can almost suggest that there was a build-up. We're doing okay in tournaments, the Super Eagles were getting better, but we had a short burst between the decade of 1990 and 2000 where we recorded almost phenomenal success within our context. Went to the Olympics, got a goal in 96, qualified for the World Cup in 1994 for the first time, won the AFCON away from Nigeria for the first time, got to number 5 in FIFA ranking, went to the Olympics as well in 1996. Our Olympic boys, won a gold. So we had a 10-year period where we were doing great stuff in sports. And from that point on, if you're going to plot the trajectory, it's been a downward spiral to a point where the last 2 Olympics now, I don't think we've won him. Okay, the last one, we won a bronze medal in football. Even that is coated and laced with embarrassment of getting the boys there on the day of the match, which, I mean, I was going to say something else, but I put all of that aside. So, but what we've seen since 2010 up until now is a steady decline in every single area of sports, in not just discovery of talent, in management of talent, in sporting facilities, in our performances, because over the years we've been extremely focused on sports from a competitive point of view. We've not particularly focused on it as a contributor to GDP. We've not focused on it as something that can be as big a business as, for instance, it is in South Africa, as it is in the northern part of Africa, and maybe as increasingly it is in the eastern part of Africa, and even Ghana. If you look at the contribution of sports to the Nigerian GDP, in the last report, there was absolutely no entry for even sports. And this is a country where you've got about 70% of Nigerians are 30% are 30 years old or less. There's a huge 18 to 65 male demography. This is fertile ground for sports if you can manage it. We have sporting facilities that are in decay. They don't generate enough income to even maintain the facilities. Talk more on a profit.
Okay, sorry. That part of contribution to GDP, is it a question of the know-how? Is it that we don't know how sports can contribute to the GDP or how?
Management of the potentials. The period that Bella talked about so nicely, most of what happened there was purely accidental. They were not institutional. There was no plan.
And that was why we couldn't sustain it.
That's why we couldn't sustain it. Somebody wakes up, before 1990, the Super Eagles were called Papa Eagles. The Super Eagles were called Papa Eagles. We were drunk on the age-bending tactics and using grandfathers to play on the 17 and on the 20, and they changed the complexion of our football. We began to think that, the developmental stage of football where we're cheating was be it all and, end it all. But then Clemens Westhoff comes and it was ignored. The NFA wasn't doing anything for him. And the man, from his own personal sacrifices and then purely one accident leading on to the other, he gets a chance to see the vice president at the time, Augustus Saikomu, who gave him whatever he wanted. It wasn't planned.
Let's just quickly take this break. When we come back, we have to talk more about how to ensure that we get to where we ought to be in sports. Just stay with us. Welcome back. So quickly, let's talk about how to ensure that Nigeria, those days we used to be so assured that when a match is coming, you can, just get your cup of coffee or whatever you want to drink and say, yes, we are winning this match. In other sports too, how can we ensure that sports is where it ought to be?
We have to repackage the incubator and oil the conveyor belt. The incubator is school sports. Principal's Cup, the Giwasagi Cup, the Lady Manua Shield, the Horsey Shield. They can come back by new names or whatever. Yeah. But let's have school sports. Let's make it compelling for any school that is going to be registered must have sports as part of its curriculum. A situation where 4 flats constitutes a secondary school or a primary school, no sporting facility. When I went to school, the first thing I saw when I entered Holy Trinity Grammar School, Sabogidara, was a sports ground. Mm-hmm. But all the schools you see today, the first thing you see is the bursar's office. You pay school fees and go and study. And then parents don't make it easy for the children. Summer holidays, they go to summer school. It's not going to work. When you bring back school sports from primary to secondary, and you begin to give scholarship programs to athletes who have potentials, a state can have the core of its team prepared for sports festival over a period in schools. They should learn to discourage these program athletes who, after their best days, they have no space for them. If we introduce the American collegiate system, where you have concessions for certain percentage for the athlete, you have certain clear programs that works with the academics. The fact that you are a sportsman doesn't mean you can't be a doctor, okay, or you can't be a lawyer. You don't have to do health and physical education only. Some of the best athletes in my school, Tony Akpekpe, for instance, was a medical student. We need to go back to those basics. Ensure that from primary school to secondary school, we have entire sports competitions. Okay. From there, these people are, marshaled into programs that provide education, a balance between education and sports.
Quickly, Kasim, just
10 seconds.
Yeah.
Well, I think also that our mindset has got to change. We've got to look at sports as something that can create not just social value, because that's where we've placed. People talk about football in the context of, it's a national unifier. It's also an income generator for a lot of countries in the world. Sports contributes meaningfully to GDP, contributes to employment, and also to social value. So our view has to change. Sports can generate social value and also economic value.
Thank you so much for coming on this morning, and we've been speaking with the sports analyst with Elevate Sports, Biola Kasim, and the CEO, Multi-Sport Services and Entertainment, Godwin Dudu Orume. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we go on this break, but quickly let me see what Festus Akimboyewa is saying on Twitter. He says, Super Eagles must give us this day. They must see today's match against Zambia as a military service and should be on the offensive from start to finish.
Military service. We're back shortly.